What's up, everybody? Real Trader Joe here, bringing you the real-time trials, tribulations, and triumphs of a real-time trader in the retail investing age. Great to see everybody. Happy Thursday. It's almost Friday, and I'm ready to call it a week, man. I've had just a crazy week with work and getting back into jiu-jitsu and everything. So, great to see everybody, and hope y'all are looking forward to the weekend. First thing is, I would like to apologize. After going over that chart, that little cheat sheet that I gave you guys in the last video, I realized it wasn't quite applicable for the short side, and that if you just plug everything in, like I said, things can get kind of confusing. That chart's fine for the long side. That cheat sheet works fine for the long side, but I definitely want to say that if you just plug everything in for the short side, that doesn't quite make sense. And what do you know? That's the topic of today's video, is the short side of the contract. So before we get into that, just a quick roadmap of where we're going here from a macro perspective. We covered the long side of the contract and the basics of an option in the last couple videos, and so this video is going to be about the short side of the contract. Then once we understand the options contract, once we understand the heart of the option, as it were, we can go into the basics of actual options, how they get their prices, how their prices change throughout the life cycle of an option, and what that means for the respective buying and selling parties, and therefore why I think selling options is actually superior to buying them in the long term. So that's a roadmap of where we're going. We're going to do the short side of the options contract first, then we're going to do options mechanics and all of the various inputs and stuff like that. And then we're going to probably do some live trades, and we could start to really get into different strategies and different things that you can do with options, because they're very versatile. So, quick overview of where we're going. And like I said before, guys, Dr. Jim Schultz, the Tasty Trade show host with his flagship show, Theory to Practice, and the Options Crash Course, explains all this stuff, but has been doing it way longer than I have, and I highly encourage you to go look at him for supplemental material and or permanent material even. If you just go with him and decide to abandon me, that's what I want. My goal is to educate people and make sure they receive the best education possible. Whether or not that's with me is totally for the audience to decide. One other note about Tasty Trade, and then we seriously will get started. This is just all housekeeping stuff. Tasty Trade does have their 100 share bonus or 10 option bonus upon a $2,000 deposit. I just thought I'd mention that because it's a really good deal. I deposited $2,000 and they gave me 100 shares of stock valued randomly at $1 and $6, and my stock value ended up being like $2.16. $216 on a $2,000 deposit is 10% on your money just for sticking with them. So, shameless plug to Tasty Trade there. I really do like the Tastyworks platform, and I'm going to continue to use it for a long time. So here we are, and unlike last time, here I am, on camera, ready to go. I decided to change things up a little bit, and now you guys get to see my face when I present, so be happy, build statues in my honor, that kind of thing. Okay, so the short side, let's get into it. This is actually from the last video too. I just decided to go ahead and put this up one last time just for a quick review. Not going to spend a ton of time on this because we spent basically most of the last video doing that, but remember, every options contract has a side, whether you're long or short, has an underlying stock, has a strike price at which both parties have agreed to buy or sell the stock at, has an actual contract price, which is given in 1 share increments. So for example, $1.10 would be $110 for the contract. Every contract has an expiration when it is no longer valid, and each contract has a type. Fortunately, there are only 2: calls, the right to buy stock, or puts, the right to sell stock. If you're on the long side, you have the right, that is. And I just want to make extra clear one more time, type is not equal to side. Because you can be long calls, you can be long puts, or you can be short calls, or you can be short puts. And today we're going to cover the short side, since it's the more confusing side of the two. So the short side of the contract. As a seller, you receive the price of the contract, also called premium. Price of the contract is just called premium in the options world. You receive premium in exchange for the obligation to buy or sell 100 shares of stock at any time until expiration. So, a couple things with that. One, you are on the buyer's behest, if you will. You're on the hook. If the buyer, you sell the option, and 2 hours after you sell the option, the buyer says, hey, I want to exercise, you have no choice. If the buyer decides to exercise the right 2 weeks into the option cycle, you have no choice. You must deliver. And that's incredibly important to understand when you are selling options, because you're essentially incurring risk. I'm trying to give you guys all the bad stuff first so that you guys can see the sweet side of this later on. But it is important to understand that as a seller, you are taking on an obligation. Think of it like an insurance company. You pay premiums to your insurance company for an insurance contract on, let's say, your car, right? So you pay, and all the while the insurance company's praying that you don't wreck your car, because if you do wreck your car, they are on the hook. But in a real-world practical scenario, which would you rather be? Would you rather be the person paying the insurance premiums every month, or would you rather be the insurance company hopefully raking in all that premium just sitting there, and most of the time cars never crash? Additionally, as a real-world example, you can think of an insurance company insuring a risky driver as an option seller selling a risky option. The more risky an option is, the more premium you're actually going to collect. And we'll get to that in a later video with options mechanics, but I just want to keep you guys on the right track here, if you will, that just because you're obligated to deliver on an option does not at all mean that it's a bad deal or that you are getting the wrong side of the stick. As I've said many times before already, I believe selling options is the way to go probably about 85 to 90% of the time. Just like the buyer can sell the contract back to the market, as a seller, you can buy the contract back at any point until expiration. You can buy it back for more than you sold it for, or you can hopefully, ideally, buy it back for less. So here's where things get kind of tricky. These last 2 bullet points right here, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on these because you kind of have to invert everything and work some magic, and you kind of have to do some mental gymnastics here. If a buyer is buying calls, a buyer on the long side has the right to purchase stock at the strike price. The buyer, in this case, is buying the stock from you. So if you are short a call, if you sell the buyer that call, you are obligated to sell them the underlying stock. And short puts are that kind of similar inversion. A little tip for understanding the short side: try to just understand or remember what the long side has to do, and then the short side is the inverse of that. So conversely with short puts, right, if you are long a put, that means you have the right to sell stock. Who do you have the right to sell stock to? Your other party in this contract. So you would sell stock to the seller. If you're selling stock to the seller, that means that the short side is obligated to buy the underlying stock. Just take the long side and flip it around. If you're long a put, you can sell the stock at any point. So if you're short the put, you are agreeing to buy that stock from the long holder of this option. I know that's confusing, but we'll get into more examples, and the more you do it, the more familiar you'll become with it, like anything else. This is the cheat sheet from last time. Doesn't really work. Not really sure why I have it here. Brain fart on my part, so we'll just move on here. Okay, so let's go look at a real example in the Tastyworks platform, and hopefully you guys will be able to see what I mean, and maybe along the way we'll also be able to see why selling options is so damn profitable most of the time. Alright, here we are, out of theory land, into practice. It's where I want to be, man. It's like I said, I don't like theory. I actually, in my earlier recordings for one of these, I was talking about like getting drunk and how all your theoretical ideas that you don't care about at the time end up biting you later, but I don't, not saying I haven't had any crazy theories, but, if you know, you know? So, yes, always better to be grounded and practicing. Theory's great, but God knows where theory is going to take you. So we are here in the Tastyworks platform, and this option right here is the 45 call for the March expiration, March monthly expiration, 43 days from now, and we are short. That's what this negative symbol means. Remember on the AMD you saw a positive number? Well, if you have a negative number, it means you're short. And just for simplicity's sake, we're going to look at this example, and I'm going to start introducing you to some options mechanics, dipping our toe in the water with broad strokes, and we'll get into finer detail in the next couple videos when we go into options mechanics. But first thing is, this is my theoretical profit and loss today. Corsair last traded at 42.84, and this is the 45 call. So we haven't actually hit our strike price yet, but you can already see that we're in the red a little bit. The reason we're in the red is because 45 is still a long ways away, and this is a good segue into the time decay of an option. If you consider that an option is the right, usually, for a buyer to purchase or sell some underlying asset in the future, right? They're paying for time. They're paying for the idea that they're going to be right in the future and make a profit when at some future date their asset is worth more than they paid for it. In the seller's case, they are receiving premium for that future risk right up front, just like we discussed in the points of being short, taking the short side of the options contract. As a seller, you are receiving premium up front for future risk. As an option continues throughout its life cycle and gets closer to expiration, the contract is worth less because your future risk is worth less, and the buyer of the options contract has less time to realize their future equity for the option that they paid. And to demonstrate what I mean, I just want to show you what happens to this option as we're short and time goes on. So right now, this is February 4th. If we go tomorrow, you see that graph moved a little bit. If we fast forward a week or 2 weeks, you see the profit graph moving. Eventually, as it gets to expiration, it will start to resemble the profit graph at expiration. This is the inner magic of selling options right here. This is our profit graph at expiration. Even though our strike price is 45, we received a lot of premium for this option. We received $6.82 a share. So really, the buyer of this options contract needs Corsair to go not to 45, but to 51 and change, almost $52. That's a long way off. So think about it. You know, we start increasing, we get closer, and March 5th, 14 days to expiration. Look at our profit now as compared to today. So you see the difference just visually on the graph here, that options lose value over time because of their nature as securities meant to predict the future, as it were. What that means for us as sellers is that we can sit here and, you know, if the stock doesn't move anywhere, doesn't go anywhere, we're going to continue to gain value. In other words, we're saying to the buyer, hey man, you need the stock to move. It's not going to be incumbent upon me to make some moves here because I've already received my payment up front and now I'm just hoping I get to keep it. Remember, you're like an insurance company. You get the premium's the most you're ever going to get, and you're hoping to God that you can keep it and the car doesn't crash, right? Same thing here. So now just to review, at any point the buyer can exercise here. You know, there's a buyer that can say, hey Joe, exercise me. I want to exercise my option, so sell me the shares at 45. But why in God's name would they do that? It last traded at 42.84 and is only now up to $44 in pre-market. They're not going to exercise at 45 either because of what we just discussed. They paid us $6 and some odd change for the contract in the first place. So if they exercised at 45, they would lose essentially the $6 that they paid. So they're not going to really have any risk of exercising us until right about here, which is our break even. I hope that made some degree of sense, and I feel in my bones like I'm forgetting something, but I'm not sure what it is. I hope that this all made sense, and that you can start to see why the time factor of the option is going to assist us here as we get closer to expiration. Now, one other thing, just to recap, you can buy this contract back at any time, and that's actually something that Tasty Trade recommends, is that you spend less time in the trade and you take profits off the table early so that you don't risk losing them later in the expiration cycle. There's a ton more going through my head right now about mechanics, but I don't want to overload you. Big takeaways here as a short option seller, or being short an options contract, is just that you receive the premium up front and you're the car insurance company. You're hoping to keep it. You're hoping that as each day goes by, things are good, and no news is good news. We get to expiration, and eventually our profit graph looks like this, and we're happy. And you might be saying in the back of your head, hey, I'm taking a defined amount of money for a potentially undefined risk. In this example, if the stock shoots up like crazy, and the buyer, on the other hand, is getting limited losses and unlimited gains. And you're right, but this time factor that I've mentioned is going to be the key factor here. Quick little statistics: 70% of all options expire worthless. And if you don't believe me, we'll just go in here and think about it for a second. So, the right to buy the right to buy Corsair at 45 and the right to sell Corsair at 45 are constantly competing with one another. In other words, if Corsair is at $40, any rights to buy Corsair below 45 are going to be profitable or in the money, and any rights to buy Corsair at anything higher than 45 are going to be out of the money or not profitable. And you can already kind of see there that just by the nature of some options being worth something, that other options are not worth something. And therefore you can see how a seller is going to benefit by saying, hey man, nobody knows where this is going to end up, but I'm going to create a range of profitability for myself. I got unlimited, I'm completely protected to the downside, and the stock has to move farther than it already is. So you can kind of see how the odds are stacked in favor of the options seller. I know that was a diatribe, a lot of information, but I promise that once you have this foundational understanding of the contract, everything else is going to make sense. If you don't take away anything else from this video, just take away that the seller is the car insurance company, and which would you rather be, the insurance company or the person paying insurance? Paying insurance sucks. Being an insurance company is probably awesome because you're not going to pay out most of the time. Some of the time you're going to pay out, but in the long run you're going to make money just off the odds that things don't crash most of the time. So, hope that made sense, guys, and that's going to be all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, sub, all that good stuff, and especially the comments, guys. As a new YouTuber, I'm really looking for comments, feedback, improvements, questions, things like that. And that's going to be all from me, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and the next video we'll be covering is the options mechanics. In other words, how option prices change and what this means for buyers and sellers of options contracts. We'll also cover a little bit of market dynamics, things like bid-ask prices, volume, open interest, just to kind of familiarize you with all the inner workings of the actual option. Alright guys, have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.